What's up, family? Yeah, you know why I'm here. I don't go live on Fridays unless there's some breaking news. We knew this was coming. We knew this was coming. We knew that this was coming. Didn't we see this? I talked about this a few months ago. I talked about this when this was going on, that when this leaked out, that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned. In a landmark ruling today, the Supreme Court, unanimous by a 6-3 vote, stated that there is no fundamental right to abortion. And what's that? There is no fundamental right to abortion in America. There's no fundamental right to it in America. There is no, it's over with. Now, I'm going to explain. Get it. I don't want a copyright strike. Because I just play fair use. Now, y'all should watch mainstream media because they have lost their living minds. I want to share this with you. This is coming from CBS. Y'all should see. They're just going over. They can talk about it all day. Your regular scheduled programming.
I sit back and just kind of like looking at this as a layperson, watching what actually happened. Actually, over the last 2 days.
Now that's Michelle Miller.
The layperson might look at this and say, wait a minute. So states have control on this one issue, and yet the federal government has control on this other issue.
The gun case.
And so when you look at sort of like the Supreme Court appears to be kind of like on a case by case issue on a various number of subjects here. And you look at this concept of stare decisis or precedent, which is central to the Supreme Court ruling. But you have a situation where the majority of justices went against precedent. So when you look at it seems like they're cherry picking to the layperson a decision that isn't based on what has been done before or what has been done in the past, or at least
abortion wasn't
on
done
the same
on a decision
side.
Before. That's what the court ruled.
Okay, this is a state
See,
issue.
this is what
States
you got to see, guys.
The federal government.
This is what these news reporters do.
Here. So
they are tailored to get you to react on an emotional subject, and
elections matter. And Republican presidents,
they want you to side with certain issues. That's what Michelle Miller is doing, Mark Morial's wife.
And so they're going to look to the words of the Constitution, and they're going to look to history. And they're not willing to say or to expand those rights if it's not really kind of what the framers originally meant. So, for example, yesterday we saw the Supreme Court strike down a New York law, a state law, that
what the Supreme Court did
hoop on lawful gun owners if they wanted to get a permit. They said, no, you can't do that. That violates the Second Amendment. Well, and then we saw today.
Well, the Second Amendment is in the Constitution.
The court's not going to read anything into the Constitution. States just do whatever you want on abortion. It's not in our backyard anymore. I mean, obviously that seems totally inconsistent. But if you're a conservative legal scholar, and this is the philosophy they have, you look to the words of the Constitution and the text.
Well, I can guarantee you, if you're a liberal scholar, and let's say when the Overturned decision was released and gay marriage was not in the Constitution, You were
is different.
ecstatic
The words of
about
that
it
amendment
because the
is a lot
Supreme
different
Court
than the due process
reached
clause
in
of
that
the
decision.
14th Amendment,
They've
which
reached
just
in a
talks about
decision that's
a
what's in your
general
favor.
liberty
But a
Which
lot of people
interest.
would argue there's still a lot of room for interpretation
Yeah.
in that Second Amendment right to bear arms, right? There's a lot of
Yes,
room
There's a
for
whole
and that
sentence
is a more
Yeah.
liberal judicial
Yeah.
philosophy,
Right.
and that's the difference in how you see
y'all
these
see it
various
though?
constitutional
Y'all see what they're
interpretations.
doing?
And again,
I'm
bottom
gonna pause
line
and
is
explain it in a
elections
second,
matter.
Bishop. I'm gonna
And
mute it.
so
You see what they're doing, but y'all see my point with them trying to. This is why a lot of people don't watch mainstream media anymore, because they try to get you to feel emotional about this stuff. Now, what Samuel Alito, I stopped it for a second, but I'm going to show you some other stuff and talk about other things too. They have protesters. Now, I found out about this earlier. Look at the protesters. You see how they gated up the Supreme Court? Unlike what they did in Congress. What the Supreme Court did in this decision, and I have the decision in front of me, Dobbs versus Dobbs, the state health officer of the Mississippi Department of Health versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. So basically, Dobbs represented the state of Mississippi, who had this restrictive abortion law in place. And Jackson's Women's Health Organization, that's always a key. That means that is a group, the group that supports abortion, that doesn't want the law. So what essentially happened and what the Supreme Court decided, I went over this a few months back. I had Bishop Scott on, shout out to Bishop, and I had Reverend Kennard Childress come on, and we went over this because remember, the decision was leaked. By the way, we still don't know how the decision was leaked and who leaked it. That has never been made known to the American people, because that does never happen in any decision that SCOTUS makes. That never takes place where a decision is leaked. They've never revealed who did it, where it came from, but it's obvious and likely, in my opinion, that probably someone, this is just Gavin Reshaw's opinion, I don't know it for a fact, I think someone, one of the justices, actually leaked it. I think a liberal justice, or at least I'll say through their law clerk, leaked that. Well, no, let me just tell you what this is and what happened and what the states did, what the Supreme Court did. They kicked it back to the states. They essentially stated, and I want to say this to you, Manrico, that it's up to the states to decide what laws they're going to regulate in terms of abortion. The federal government, they stated from the beginning that Roe v. Wade was a terrible, they said Roe v. Wade was a terrible decision. This is what Alito says. He felt that Roe had no place being decided by the Supreme Court. He said it was terribly wrong. Now, when you read the dissenting opinion, it was 6-3. Of course, we know, I know who the dissenters were. We know that the dissenting opinion has got to be, it's definitely going to have to be just Kagan and Sotomayor. Sixth Street. Remember when Kavanaugh, and remember this too, and this is something else. Whatever happened to Brett Kavanaugh being someone threatening the Supreme Court justice? Brett Kavanaugh actually having someone outside his house trying to kill him. Whatever happened with that? Allegedly trying to, but being harassed. You're not supposed to harass a Supreme Court justice and threaten them based off their decisions. And listen, the Supreme Court has been known, and I'll say this again, they have been known to make terrible decisions. Plessy versus Ferguson, Dred Scott, Supreme Courts are known, don't always get it right because the Supreme Court is guided by men, but there are some decisions based off what you either your philosophy, and I'll agree with the CBS contributor who said that, yeah, based off your philosophy, some people may like this versus that. That's true. But I'm going to quote what Alito wrote here in the final part of his decision, of his opinion. He wrote the majority opinion of the court. Kavanaugh concurred in part, did a concurring opinion. Thomas concurred. Now, Thomas said something very interesting. He mentioned Griswold versus Connecticut, Oberfeld decision. Oberfeld, which was the right, Griswold was about the right to obtain contraceptives. And he wondered, could this be precedent for those cases? He says the exercise of the right at issue in Griswold, Einstein, Lawrence, and Oberfeld does not destroy a potential life, but an abortion has the effect. So if the rights at issue in those cases are fundamentally the same as the right recognized in Roe v. and Casey, then the implication is clear. Hold on. Let me share this with y'all. Let me take this off the screen. Let me share what I'm reading here. Hold on. He says, the Constitution does not permit the state to regard the destruction of life as a matter of any significance. That view is evident throughout the dissent. The dissent has much to say about the effects of pregnancy on women, the burdens of motherhood, and the difficulties faced by poor women. These are important concerns. However, the dissent evinces no similar regard for a state's interest in protecting prenatal life, meaning they are not interested. Now, I do not like Clarence Thomas, as you know. Clarence, yeah, Uncle Clarence has been cooning for a long time. But sometimes a broken clock will be right on the time at one point at least, or at least twice in a day. And that's what we got with Clarence Thomas. Now, I know there are some of you who do not agree with this decision. I know some of you who support this decision that are on his chat. We're going to try and bring something in, some of y'all in. Yes, it is against the law to try and intimidate Supreme Court justices. That's correct. I want to know if my brother, I invited you, Bishop Scott, if you can come in here briefly and just talk. You don't have to come on video. I know you're still recovering, but I want you, and I sent the link in Messenger. I want you to come on and tell me what your thoughts are on this decision. What do you all think? I'm actually going to, if they outlaw birth control, all contraceptives will vanish off of the store shelf. Now, let me clarify some facts for you all. Abortion is not illegal, depending on which state you are in. Certain states have certain laws that are put in place that have outlawed abortion or restricted it to a certain degree based off the number of weeks. Now in Missouri, the Attorney General has actually announced that abortion is flat out outlawed in the state. And you see, people like that and the people that are protesting who are upset, some of these people are thinking, and that's just that, they are not thinking. They react on emotions. And when we talk about things like abortion or homosexuality, rape, or any type of subject that is taboo or off limits, not even necessarily taboo, but just controversial, it's going to tick off emotions. And I want to share something right quick. And I'm going to open the phone lines later. But this is what your former president had to say. This is what Barack Obama said. Now, we know he was going to speak on this. Today, the Supreme Court not only reversed nearly 50 years of precedent, it relegated the most intensely personal decision someone can make to the whims of politicians and ideologues, attacking the essential freedoms of millions of Americans. He also urged the ruling should serve as a powerful reminder of the central role the courts play in protecting our rights and of the fact that elections have consequences. That goes vice versa, Mr. President, former Mr. President. What about protecting unborn? If rights begin at the moment a life starts, then your rights stop where mine begin. But what the Supreme Court did was kick this back. We got on. Now, this is the same Barack Obama who actually said when he was speaking at a Planned Parenthood convention, he actually said he was okay. I'm just going to play the video. He said he didn't want his daughters punished. Now listen exactly to what he says.
9 years old and 6 years old. I'm going to teach them, first of all, about values and morals. But if they make a mistake, I don't want them punished with a baby. I don't want them punished with an STD at the age of 16. This is morals. But if they make a mistake, I don't want them punished with a baby. I don't want them punished with an STD at the age of 16.
Says, if my children, now they were kids then, but he said, if my children make a mistake, I don't want them punished with a baby. I don't want them to catch an STD. So he was okay with murdering or sanctioning the death of his grandchildren. Let's bring on Bishop Scott, and I'm gonna open the phone lines too, because if you all and people who disagree, you're free to call in, but I want you, we're gonna try and keep it respectful, just so you know. Bishop Scott, how you doing?
How you doing, Ed? Brother Gavin, how you making out?
I'm doing fine, Bishop. How you doing?
Coming along, but I had to step in and listen to this very important program that you're having today. You always bring up issues that are vitally important to not just the situation at hand, but the America as a whole. Each American has to deal with some of the things. I love your programs because they always deal with issues that have far-reaching impact than the particular thing that you're talking about. And this is one of them. Abortion is one of those issues.
I appreciate it, my brother. And I wanted you to comment. I guess you and I spoke even earlier this morning when I got the notification. We already had talked before when we talked a few months ago when this decision was leaked. So they didn't really change anything. They just went ahead and released it.
Yes, and I applaud those justices that stood boldly in spite of the threats, even of their life, protest at their homes, which is against the law. It's against the law to try to sway, try to threaten, try to intimidate Supreme Court justices. That's against the law. But no one said anything about it. No one in the federal government acted upon it. I don't see the Department of Justice actually doing anything significant. Oh yeah, they increase security, but it goes beyond that. But I'm proud of these justices that voted their conscience, that decided on things that they believed in, and not being intimidated by the mob, by the crowd. And so I first want to applaud their efforts at standing on what they believed in. Second, yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
Go ahead, finish your point.
No, I was going to also say that when we talk about abortion, and in particular pro-abortion advocates talk about abortion, they talk about it as if there's only one life that's to be considered, and that's their own life. To me, I believe that the human life begins in the womb at conception. So when we're talking about aborting a baby, we're talking about saving the one life while destroying the other. Both are human beings. I've never heard of a woman ever giving birth to anything but another human being. You know, I never heard them giving a birth to a chimpanzee, a gorilla, a dog, a cat, or any other thing. It's always has been from the time immemorial until this very day. They've always given birth to another human being. Every one of us were at one time abortable babies, abortable in somebody's womb. But because of what either they believed in or what they wanted, we were able to live. And I consider myself a human being. And when we talk about the rights of the mother, you got to also talk about the rights of the unborn child. And I think that's a lot of times lost in the discussion, in particular when you're talking about it from a pro-life perspective, choice of perspective.
Yeah. Let me play this video real quick.
I'm not surprised, but it's still really hard. I'm from Texas, and in Texas they plan to criminalize abortion, which means up to life sentences for abortion providers. And I'm just very afraid for the world that we've just stepped into, that it's no longer a matter of can somebody get sued for you having an abortion, it's now can somebody go to prison for life. I think it's going to impact us women specifically when they're directly impacted by this decision, but I think the most troubling aspect is that this is just the beginning.
I knew it was coming. What we need to do as women, organize. We are the majority. We just need to come up.
This decision must stand! This decision must stand!
My responsibility is that all we want is our right to choose. If you want to have a child, go ahead and have a child. If you want to leave your child on the doorstep, go ahead and leave your child on the doorstep. But for us, we can't live with that.
Now you see that? These are people, I don't know. These are people who are making their decision based off emotion. There's no rationale.
Right.
There's no rationale with them. They're talking on an emotion. You see how he was upset. He's the man.
I think a little.
He could go and sleep around with so many women and end up, they would end up just taking care of it by getting it started.
Well, the way that gentleman was looking, I don't know. He may not be the one, a man sleeping around. I think, at least not with women anyway. But nevertheless. But I think.
What I wanted to ask
and I heard one of them say, Gavin. Can I make this one point? What I heard some of them say in the video you played is once again a false claim. The false claim is that now all of a sudden you can't get abortions. This was not a ruling about whether you can or cannot get abortions. It's a ruling about states' rights. That the state has a right to determine, the state and its citizens, not just legislators, but the states and its citizens can determine for themselves their position on the issue of abortion or not abortion, or what kind of abortion you will get. It'll be from the most
Wait, hold on a
extreme
second.
to the most benign.
Wait, stop a second, Bishop. That's not me echoing. Danielle, I think that's is that you, Bishop?
I don't know. Let me. Does it sound like me echoing?
Well, it
How
says
can I-
sounds like me, but I think it's coming. If you have your computer and phone on, that might be it.
Yeah, I have my. I just have my iPad. I'm doing it through the iPad. I don't have my phone on or my
Okay.
computer's not near. Do I sound better now?
Let me hear it.
Do I sound better now?
Through that.
Oh wow.
Oh, what's up, Mike? So as Danielle says, I'm sounding static. Meaning, the microphone is through here. I don't know why.
Let me see. I don't know if I can.
Oh,
In the White House, President Biden here supported this. Remove that. Look at Ann Wagner. And when you look at what we can do, we will continue to look wherever we can go. There's many lives. Current laws are still in place right now.
See, that's coming from Bishop. I'm gonna unmute Bishop in a minute, but
what would you want to tell them?
something I want to ask the Bishop something.
I would tell him in less than
You know, in
140
Missouri-
days, things are going to change here. And he will have now a Congress that will call him up. He will now have the ability of a Congress to have oversight. He will now have a Congress that will hold him accountable. Thank you all, most importantly, to America. I continue to pray. One,
Yeah.
for the safety of everyone, but more importantly, we now have a voice for all life. Thank you and God bless.
And we've been listening to House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy discussing the Supreme Court's decision, praising today's ruling that has overturned Roe versus Wade, eliminating federal protections for a woman to have an abortion. He calls the decision a victory, but says the Republicans' work is not done.
We have breaking news right now, though. We must go now to Congress. They have passed a landmark bipartisan gun bill. It's now headed to the President Biden's desk, and that is where he is expected to sign it into law.
The legislation includes expanded background checks for gun buyers under the age of 21, as well as funding for states to enact red flag laws and boost mental health services. It also closes the so-called boyfriend loophole to prevent domestic violence abusers from buying a gun. Let's listen.
In danger. And what I think many of our colleagues perhaps haven't quite, or perhaps they have fully understood, is that this also undermines the right to privacy in the United States of America. But we are here to solve this issue. Our job is to develop a path forward. And in that, we know that this House has passed and is willing to codify Roe. But what we also need is answers from our colleagues in the United States Senate. So to those senators who voted for these justices under the claim and the guise that this would not happen, this decision falls on them.
That's right to
What
do
will
so.
they do?
There's something called checks and balances. And that's what the Supreme Court, what you saw today and what you say is checks and balances, ladies and gentlemen. The Supreme Court interprets the law. And sometimes the Supreme Court may make a decision that it obviously doesn't fit with her ideology.
We are talking
Just like
about a court
Oberfeld probably wouldn't have set well
with the majority
with
of justices
Mitch McConnell's
appointed
ideology.
by a party that has not won a popular presidential election more than once in 30 years.
I'm gonna turn this off. I can't
Ruling
listen to her.
against the majority.
Moron. But Bishop, I want to ask you, what did you think of the video that I put up where Barack Obama said he didn't want his daughter punished by a baby, and he spoke on this?
Well, it doesn't surprise me that our former presidents took that stand. I think it was a travesty what he said. Actually, that he wouldn't want a mistake. A baby is not a mistake. Let me say this: no human being is a mistake. And I was born with a disability myself. And many people think that people with disabilities are a mistake, and many people abort because their child has a disability. Now we're able to see a child whether they're disabled or not through ultrasound. That wasn't the case when I was born. There was no such a thing that back then in 1951. But now they can see whether a child has Down syndrome, has cerebral palsy, or the like. But to me, to inject that of the child, that his daughter's mistake, quote unquote, should not be something that should hinder her future. And so, in order to protect her future, he would not mind his children aborting his grandchildren. In fact, he seemed like he preferred it. What I found interesting was the correlation between that and STDs. I mean, STDs, you'll get that before you become pregnant. You can get that without being pregnant. That's your lifestyle that brings that into your life. But abortion is ending a human life. And our 44th president said if his daughter came up with a child that they felt was a mistake, that he would be not devoid of
If his daughter's made a
encouraging and
mistake, he
supporting
wouldn't want them to
their
be
decision to
punished.
abort.
Right, and I think that he said he doesn't want his daughter to be punished with a baby, and
Right, a
so
mistake.
he's okay with killing his grandchild.
Right, so yeah, right, exactly. That's what it would be.
Let's just listen to Biden.
Today, the Supreme Court of the United States expressly took away the constitutional right from the American people that it had already recognized. They didn't limit it, they simply took it away. That's never been done to a right so important to so many Americans, but they did it. It's a sad day for the court and for the country.
It has been taken
50
away.
years ago, Roe v. Wade was decided. This landmark case protected a woman's right to choose, her right to make intensely personal decisions with her doctor, free from the interference of politics. It reaffirmed basic principles of equality. The women have the power to control their own destiny. And it reinforced a fundamental right of privacy, the right of each of us to choose how to live our lives. Now, with Roe gone, let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. As chairman and ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and as vice president now as president of the United States, I've studied this case carefully. I've overseen more Supreme Court confirmations than anyone today, where this case was always discussed. I believe Roe v. Wade was the correct decision as a matter of constitutional law and application of the fundamental right.
He said earlier, if you listen to what he said this was decided already by the court that it had been law. The Supreme Courts interpret the law. You see, when it goes the way that they don't want, they want to complain about it. But when it's fine the way that, but when it's the situation is reversed, they're okay. It's not about law and facts. It's about what makes me feel good. What is part of my ideology? What do I feel comfortable with? Because I know right after the Supreme Court made their decision yesterday, limit striking down New York's gun laws, that concealed carry law that they had, Congress passed gun legislation. I bet you 90% of the people in Congress don't even know what's in that bill.
Exactly right.
Even John Conyers stated they don't read the bills that come to Congress. We don't even know what's in it. They only tell you partially a general consumption of it, but nothing specifically. They're talking about red flag laws and so forth that are in that. We have to be careful. There may be even issues with Biden has talked about banning certain magazines. He's talking about banning 9mm. A 9mm will blow your lung out. A 9mm is a caliber of a bullet. It's the most popular caliber in the United States. That's why when the pandemic happened, there was a shortage on ammunition. A lot of people don't realize that. 45s, 9mm, 357s, they were missing from the shelves. And people were panicking about it.
To privacy and liberty in matters of family and personal autonomy. It was a decision on a complex matter, but through a careful balance between a woman's right to choose earlier in her pregnancy and the state's ability to regulate later in her pregnancy. A decision with broad national consensus that most Americans of faith and backgrounds found acceptable, that have been the law of the land for most of the lifetime of Americans today. And it was a constitutional principle upheld by justices appointed by Democrat and Republican presidents alike. Roe v. Wade was a 7-2 decision, written by a justice appointed by a Republican president, Richard Nixon. In the 5 decades that followed Roe v. Wade, justices appointed by Republican presidents from Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan, George W. Bush were among the justices who voted to uphold the principles set forth in Roe v. Wade.
Like Thurgood Marshall.
It was 3 justices named by one president, Donald Trump, who were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country. Make no mistake, this decision is a culmination of a deliberate effort over decades to upset the balance of our law. It's a realization of an extreme ideology and a tragic error by the Supreme Court, in my view. The court has done what it has never done before, expressly take away a constitutional right that is so fundamental to so many Americans that had already been recognized. The court's decision to do so will have real and immediate consequences. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls were forced to bear their rapist's child. The child, a consequence. It just stuns me. So extreme that doctors will be criminalized for fulfilling their duty to care. Imagine having a young woman have to carry a child of incest as a consequence of incest. No option. Too often the case. The poor women are going to be hit the hardest. It's cruel. In fact, the court laid out state laws criminalizing abortion that go back to the 1800s as rationale. The court literally taking America back 150 years. This is a sad day for the country, in my view. But it doesn't mean the fight's over. Let me be very clear and unambiguous. The only way we can secure a woman's right to choose, the balance that existed, is for Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade as federal law. No executive action from the president can do that. And if Congress, as it appears, lacks the votes to do that now, voters need to make their voices heard. This fall, we must elect more senators and representatives who will codify women's right to choose into federal law once again. Elect more state leaders to protect this right at the local level. We need to restore the protections of Roe as law of the land. We need to elect officials who will do that. This fall, Roe is on the ballot. Personal freedoms are on the ballot. The right to privacy, liberty, equality, they're all on the ballot. Until then, I will do all of my power to protect a woman's right in states where they will face the consequences of today's decision. While the court's decision cast a dark shadow over a large swath of the land, many states in this country still recognize a woman's right to choose. So, if a woman lives in a state that restricts abortion, the Supreme Court's decision does not prevent her from traveling from her home state to the state that allows it. It does not prevent a doctor in that state from treating her. As the Attorney General has made clear, women must remain free to travel safely to another state to seek care they need. My administration will defend that bedrock right. If any state or local official, high or low, tries to interfere with a woman's exercising her basic right to travel, I will do everything in my power to fight that deeply un-American attack. My administration will also protect a woman's access to medications that are approved by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, like contraception, which is essential for preventative health care. Mifepristone, which the FDA approved 20 years ago to safely end early pregnancies and is commonly used to treat miscarriages. Some states are saying that they'll try to ban or severely restrict access to these medications. But extremist governors and state legislators are looking to block the mail or search a person's medicine cabinet or control a woman's actions by tracking data on her apps she uses are wrong and extreme and out of touch.
They do that already.
The majority of Americans.
To men. To women.
American Medical Association.
You have an Apple app.
The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists wrote to me and Vice President Harris stressing that these laws are not based on evidence and asking us to act to protect access to care. They say by limiting access to these medicines, maternal mortality will climb in America. That's what they say. Today, I'm directing the Department of Health and Human Services to take steps to ensure these critical medications are available to the fullest extent possible. And the politicians cannot interfere.
But you may not want to come
Decisions
down.
that should be made between a woman and her doctor. And my administration will remain vigilant as the implications of this decision play out.
How to wait, just put it in the room.
I've warned about how this decision risks the broader right to privacy for everyone. That's because Roe recognized the fundamental right to privacy that has served as a basis for so many more rights that we've come to take for granted, that are ingrained in the fabric of this country.
Now I'm gonna stop. I don't want to play a whole lot. Well, let's see how much time we got. Y'all want me to finish playing it? I want to get to something he said, and it might be towards the end, but I'm gonna play the rest of it because I want you to hear how he contradicts himself with what he says. So let me finish playing
The
the
right
whole
to make
thing.
the best decisions for your health.
Fair use, by the
The
way.
right to use birth control, a married couple in the privacy of their bedroom, for God's sake. The right to marry the person you love. Justice Thomas said as much today. He explicitly called to reconsider the right of marriage equality, the right of couples to make their choices on contraception. This extreme and dangerous path the court is now taking us on. Let me close with 2 points. First, I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this decision, to keep all protests peaceful. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. No intimidation. Violence is never acceptable.
Now, that's what he said. Violence is never acceptable, but he's okay with putting babies in a blender. You see that, Bishop?
Well, listen to his whole thing. He says that.
Yeah.
But then he's rallying folk to do something about it, to take action against it. He said he's going to take action. He's not going to allow it. He's going to do this. He's already threatened. He already threatened to engage in what we call public health emergency. He's going to put all the stuff he said previous to that last statement into that package. They are unhappy, just like he said about the judges and the threats upon them. Oh, it's not right. But in the same token, they said, but I understand the people's feelings. So you're saying one thing out of one side of your mouth and something outside of the other side. Don't protest violently, but we're gonna do. But don't you accept this either? And whatever we gotta do to change it, we're gonna change it. So it's like a two-sided message. He has a subliminal message to those who are against this decision, by at the same time trying to encourage peace and level-headedness to those who will believe this okey doke stuff he's trying to
Threats, intimidation are
No,
not
but the point I'm
speech.
making, Bishop, and what I'm
You must
saying is
stand
that
against violence.
he's saying violence is not appropriate, but you're supporting something that is extremely violent and graphic. It's just contradictory.
Well, their posture is a human baby is not a human until it breathes its first breath. So naturally, he doesn't equate that to being a human being. So you're not. So that's their main argument. Where the fetus is not a human, the embryo is not a human. Only until you get out the womb are you a human being. And I just am opposed to that. I don't believe that's true from a Christian perspective. And another thing I find interesting, something else I find interesting, he said, we of faith. Now, his faith is Catholicism, and Catholicism does not believe in abortion.
No, we don't. Catholic, right? Well,
So you talk about faith and all this,
Right. Well, Catholicism, Roman Catholic, and I'm Catholic myself, which is Christianity. We believe that abortion, the Catholic Church has been adamantly opposed to abortion throughout its history since Roe v. Wade was was law. They state that life begins at the moment of conception. The church teachings are that life begins at the moment of conception, and those church teachings go back to Jesus Christ's teachings. They go back to even the law of Moses. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder. The commandments make it clear. Now, people try to justify it and rationalize it all they want. We do have separation of church and state, but separation of church and state is very important to realize. That means that the government can't dictate what religion you practice. That does not mean that you can't exercise. You're free to exercise the religious beliefs that you have, and you also cannot. That is not a license to do whatever you want either. Just because you don't believe, Bishop, let's say you don't believe in the 10 Commandments, you don't have a right to steal anything or to lie under oath or to lie. There's no fundamental right to lie. There's no fundamental right to cheat. There's no fundamental right to, if you don't believe in the 10 Commandments, and the Supreme Court has even decided that in the old case, just because you don't believe in them, that doesn't mean you got a right to steal or murder.
Right.
We have laws against that because we want to respect everybody's property rights, right? You wouldn't want someone stealing something that you worked hard for. And that's why we make laws for it. And honestly, we have to make laws for it because there are people who will do whatever the hell they want. They still do whatever think they can do what they want, and there's no consequences for it.
Right, that's the key. There's consequences for your actions.
Right.
Second, I know so many of us are
looks like he wants to take a nap.
The court has taken something.
He's tired.
I know so many women are now going to face.
He makes me tired listening to him.
I hear you. I support you. I stand with you. Consequences, the consensus of the American people, core principles of equality, liberty, dignity, and the stability of the rule of law demand that Roe should not have been overturned. With this decision, the conservative majority of the Supreme Court shows how extreme it is, how far removed they are from the majority of this country. It made the United States an outlier among developed nations in the world. But this decision must not be the final word. My administration will use all of its appropriate lawful powers. But Congress must act. And with your vote, you can act. You can have the final word. This is not over. Thank you very much. More to say this in weeks to come. Thank you.
Not over.
Is the Supreme Court broken? Is it broken?
The pro-abortion people said this is going to be the hottest summer America's ever seen.
Yeah. And, you know, that thing, and bringing that another point, here's my thing. Could this also be a gaslight or green light for people to go to the polls and vote Democrat? Do you
Of
think?
course.
All right.
The January 6th thing is all about that. Everything that they're doing is all about that, because you can't look at their record. Gas prices, food shortage, food hiking in prices, all the things that are happening now. We're on the verge of World War III. So how do you get away from all of that catastrophe that has happened just in a year and a half? You divert, you deflect. You deflect it by talking about something that happened nearly 2 years ago. You deflect by taking these cases of the United States Supreme Court and really lying about a lot of it. Talking about it's against the Constitution. The Supreme Court said it was against the Constitution for Roe versus Wade. They're the interpreters of the law, not the executive branch nor the legislative branch. It's the United States Supreme Court that's the interpreter. And they're looking at the law. They don't see anything about abortion directly in the Constitution. And so that's why they overturned it. Let's be real. An abortion is not being forbidden. It's being given over to the states to determine what is abortion in their opinion. Some states already are very liberal. California, New York, Maryland, other states within the United States are very liberal states. You can virtually get an abortion at will, whenever, from the first trimester to the last trimester, in a couple of states, even beyond that. And then you have states like Texas, and you have states like Florida and some others in Mississippi who have very strict abortion laws. But it's up to the people and the state itself to determine, not the federal government. The federal government, we need to get away from a lot of this power of the federal government. The federal government is a funny bird. The federal government tries to control the lives of people. Talk about freedom of choice and all of that. All of this, everything they promote is about control and all of that type of thing. And so, I mean, this idea of defending the Constitution, I mean, there's been no greater attacks on the Constitution than what has happened over the past 1 to 2 years. The Constitution is almost a laughable document right now. It's almost a laughable document. Nobody is upholding to it. Everybody is stretching it to the very limit. And now we talk about, see, it's funny. When you need the Constitution to defend your position, you'll pull out the Constitution, dust it off, and start reading from it. But these same proponents of this of Roe versus Wade are also opponents of people owning guns, which is actually in the Constitution. That is in the Second Amendment. There's no amendment that talks about abortion. There's no amendment that talks about that. It's up to the states to determine what happens there.
Right.
But he don't want the states to determine it. He wants to determine it for himself. He wants the federal government under the Democratic Party to determine it.
Right. And what the Supreme Court decided, what's going on and what you're seeing taking place. And you look at all of the news. I showed you NBC. Let's see ABC and CBS earlier. Let's see ABC News. What it is that the Supreme Court left it to the states. There's no fundamental right to, they essentially said there's no fundamental right to abortion. That's what this was about in the Constitution. It's not, to them, it's not listed, and they're saying we should have stayed out of it from the beginning.
Available to women.
But that's ABC News. And they had that, remember when they had that immigrant woman who was talking about, who's black, talking about we need to go, we are the majority. These are the same people that they are going off with people who would throw them under the bus right now. Because once they use you and get what they want, we don't need you anymore.
Because what are they doing for African Americans right now?
Not a damn thing.
What are they doing for us?
Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet he talking about you had my back and I have your back. all they got to our back is a knife.
Right.
He got a knife to our back. Oh yeah, he got our back, all right.
Wait, hold on, Bishop. Someone asked me a question. What about these apps? I was quoting what Joe Biden was talking about, how he was saying how they want they have apps to track women on their about their baby and natal health, and he was against it. I said they already do that already with these apps. If you're on Apple, where they track you, I mean, look, they can track wherever you are. If you look at your Facebook page, they are listening to stuff you say. Because if I'm talking about something, for instance, if I talk about hotels, the next thing I'm gonna see an ad from Facebook suggesting I go to this hotel, try this hotel at this location.
Yep, that's true.
They do this already. They support this already. He wants laws that's going to track. He's talking about privacy. What? And that's them there. That no logic.
If the court spoke,
I'm angry.
and
I'm
whatever it said
upset.
was
You can
final
tell
for
just by how
eternity, we'd
she's
still have
reacting.
segregation in this country, potentially. Plessy versus Ferguson in the late 1800s, of course, said separate but equal was fine, and the court in 1954 in Brown versus Board overturned
Always
that.
bring us into it, don't they?
So it's not, it's
always
not a fixed principle, and that's what we saw this court say, and these conservatives say. It was egregiously wrong. Then they laid that all out in there. I know we're tight on time, but certainly the court crafting a new vision for stare decisis.
By a settled decision, which is in order to continue some consistency when the Supreme Court has reached a decision on something that largely seems to be final. That way you're not constantly going back and forth with reinterpretations of laws. You might call it settled law, as Brett Kavanaugh referred to Roe versus Wade, a decision that's 50 years old. This is going against traditional decision-making in the Supreme Court. You were saying is stare decisis dead. What I'm wondering is now that the Supreme Court seems willing to reconsider these rulings that are decades or centuries maybe in the making, what does this mean for maybe future decisions of what rights could maybe be on the chopping block?
A lot of people asking today, Trevor, what good is precedent if it's not, let stand. Stare decisis means to let what's decided stand. And I think the key caveat to that principle, we talk about it all the time, is that, none of the justices, including the liberal justices, believe that that's an absolute principle. Certainly, if it was absolute, if the court spoke and whatever it said was final for eternity, we'd still have segregation in this country, potentially. Plessy versus Ferguson in the late 1800s, of course, said separate but equal was fine, in the court in 1954, and Brown versus Board overturned that. It's not, it's not a fixed principle, and that's what we saw this court say, these conservatives say. It was egregiously wrong. Then they laid that all out in there. I know we're tight on time, but certainly the court crafting a new vision for stare decisis.
Absolutely, and I mean we're seeing.
So that was ABC. Let me say this. I mean, laws change all the time. People change all the time. And yes, you're correct. Segregation was the law of the land for hundreds of years. Jim Crow was the law of the land for nearly 100 years until when you had the Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education and other cases that said separate but equal is unconstitutional. Right? So,
right.
Laws
so it's not so you're saying, Gavin, it's really not a precedent to change a law that's been egregious.
What I'm saying
is slavery was a law. In many states, slavery was a law. In the United States, at one point, slavery was a law. Dred Scott decision was a law. You could take a person who went to a free state and take him back to the slave state, and he's a slave again.
Right.
I mean, all these were laws. The Ferguson law, all of those were laws.
The Constitution changed was that the Congress passed, because we had Reconstruction, and in large part because we had Black elected officials that actually understood the power and precedent that they had, because they needed this. They passed laws that gave Blacks the right to vote under the 15th Amendment, gave them citizenship under the 14th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. It's codified. It's in the Constitution now. When you make, that's called an amendment.
Right.
Amendments that are there, like your first, second, third, and the 13th through 15th, that regulated and dealt with our citizenship. That's why you have Congress that passed that. We had to fight a war, however, in 1861 to stop the expansion of slavery and to end slavery. That's why the Union won. Otherwise, we probably could, Dred Scott could still be the law of the land, but that effectively overturned slavery. Now,
but now keep in mind, Gavin, as you well know, the Ferguson decision was made in 1898, where schools were separate but equal. That was way after. That was almost 100 years, well, 50 years certainly after slavery was over. After the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments became law, became amendments, as you said, the Supreme Court still said, well, you know, as long as they're educated, they don't have to go to school with each other. As long as you got a school for black folk,
Plessy versus
you know,
Ferguson,
that's separate but equal.
Yeah, that was in 1896, and
Right.
1857 was Dred Scott. So justices make, it is true that Supreme Courts don't always get it right. They're men. They make terrible decisions.
Mm-hmm.
They have.
Oh, yeah.
But it depends if you like it or you're against it. It obviously depends on what your feelings are, because that's what we see with people reacting based off of emotions. That's what I see. But but what I want to point out too, when we talked about the Constitution and so forth, through the 14th Amendment, what they're talking about, Bishop, and Supreme Courts, and I mentioned those decisions, those cases such as Oberfell. There's also the Loving decision, which was interracial marriage.
Right.
Griswold, which dealt with contraceptives. What those fell under was called the fundamental right to privacy through the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment guarantees everybody equal protection under the law and also due process. You can't be deprived life, liberty, and property. And that's a key word, especially when we talk about Roe v. Wade. Life, liberty, and property without the due process of law in the states. That's why we have courts. That's why we have trials. When we want to take away someone's life, if we want to take away someone's property, like when you have civil forfeiture and stuff, and also like their liberty where they got to go to jail, we have a court system that sets that up, right, Bishop? So we go through a process, which is why you have attorneys that do that. What they are saying essentially, and is that there is no fundamental right to an abortion. That's what the Supreme Court said.
Right.
And they had to ask the question.
But Gavin, may I just add, my concern with what Biden has said just a moment ago and what he has been saying about the possibility of the overturning of the Roe versus Wade is that when you have one, like you mentioned at the very beginning of this program, that this nation has what you call checks and balances. 3 parts of the government: executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch. When you have one branch trying to usurp the authority of another branch and even verbally criticizing it and really turning people against the decision, there's a problem with me. And another aspect of it is they always want to devoid themselves and divorce themselves of who's on the Supreme Court. There's no Supreme Court justice that is not first nominated by a president and then voted on and confirmed by the Congress. So it's just not somebody appointed arbitrarily. It's someone who goes through a process. He goes through the executive branch by the president nominating the person. Then he's confirmed or not confirmed by the Congress. And so they first meet at the judicial level, then the full Congress has to vote on it. So every one of them, Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, anybody you name, went through that process. Joe Biden, ironically, was the one that everybody hates the man now, but he was the one that was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee during that time, during the time of Clarence Thomas. He was a senator and the chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Right. Look at this. Yeah, that's a good point. This is in my hometown of New Orleans. This is closed. New Orleans abortion clinic shuts doors shortly after Supreme Court
Could
ruling.
get abortions in Louisiana are now closed because of the state's trigger law.
And Paul Murphy is joining us in Central City, where activists on both sides of the issue showed up this morning. And this has been just a powder keg of a decision.
Eric, Sheba, this health clinic on General Pershing in Central City locked its doors around 11 o'clock this morning, and the healthcare clinic staff and workers here have since left the building. And throughout the morning, some people have come up here to the clinic to pray and rejoice in the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe. Others showed up in tears, saying the ruling is bad for women, particularly those at the lower end of the economic spectrum. There were only 3 clinics left where women could get an abortion in Louisiana. We are told the 3 combined performed about 8,000 procedures a year. Louisiana's trigger law kicked in the moment the Supreme Court issued its ruling this morning, and at this point, abortions are now illegal in the state. The only exception is when the life of the mother is in danger.
The gut reaction is more women are going to die in Louisiana from this. Those coat hanger stories are real. We're really worried women are going to hurt themselves because in Louisiana, with the 3 clinics closed, the closest state is Illinois if you want to seek an abortion. New Mexico, California, New York, not that many people are going to be able to fly out there. If you're watching, contact Jane's Due Process or National Network of Abortion Funds, and they can help you get there.
This is a historic day. Something we've been praying for over 36 years. We've been out in the street. There were 10 of these things in the city when we started. This is the last one.
So what you have done and what you have prayed for is to make death for women easier because you don't allow them access to good medical care.
And Lift Louisiana issued a statement this morning saying the Supreme Court of the United States today turned its back on nearly 50 years of legal precedents, and in doing so has harmed millions of people who no longer have access to abortion services. And truly an historic day here in Louisiana and across the country. In Central City, Paul Murphy, Eyewitness News.
Did you see that old woman?
Today is a
Bishop, you saw that old woman?
Yeah.
You have hurt women. You've caused a lot of other, what you've prayed for is going to cause the deaths of a lot of women.
Lord, today. That fear tactic, that pulling on the heartstrings, emotions, and all of that. That's why this nation can't get us so far. Because we just so much into our feelings, into our emotions, don't even look at things logically. We just accept the okie doke of everybody.
Right. They've already said, like we said, it's still legal provided it involves the care of the mother.
Right.
So they didn't overturn abortion. They just said, let the states decide what to do with it. And let's be real honest. This was not about, abortion is not about care of a woman. In truthfulness, as we stated earlier, 90% of it is about having a baby, not wanting to have a baby. As Barack Obama has said himself, I don't want my children punished with the baby for a mistake they made.
Mm-hmm.
It's about sex without consequences. And ultimately, and let me say this, when I was in school, I shouldn't say had I'm saying an opportunity makes it sound good, but I actually saw a video of an abortion performed. And you have to have a heart of stone, if we talk about emotions, not to be moved by what you saw. Because you literally saw the baby fighting for his life or her life and had it snatched away from him. So those people who see that think it's just a clump of cells, they need to really go look at this documentary called The Silent Scream by Bernard Nathanson, a man who performed hundreds of abortions. He even performed abortions on his own children. And when they made sonograms available in the 1970s, he had the opportunity to look at it. And It changed him. It changed him. Now I can't play the video because of copyright issues. I've shared it before with everybody. But
world. And so
that's Dr.
and for a period of 2 years, I was the director of the largest abortion clinic in the Western world. And so discerning is this instrument that the tiny valves of the heart can be studied as they snap open and shut during the contractions of the heart. And those technologies, those apparatuses and machines which we now use every day have convinced us that beyond question, the unborn child is simply another human being, another member of the human community, indistinguishable in every way from any of us. Now, for the first time, we have the technology to see abortion from the victim's vantage point. Ultrasound imaging has allowed us to see this. And so for the first time, we are going to watch a child being torn apart, dismembered, disarticulated, crushed, and destroyed by the unfeeling steel instruments of the abortionist. We have then the 12-week unborn child in the uterus being this muscle surrounding the child. The instrument then will come into direct contact with the child, and with a pressure of approximately 55 or so millimeters of mercury applied to the end of this instrument, as it is attached to a long, thick suction tubing at this end and to the abortion instrumentation, that is the machine at the other end. The suction tip will begin to tear the child apart. The pieces of the body are torn away. You will note that as the suction tip, which is now over here, moves toward the child will rear away from it and undergo much more violent manner. Its orientation changes from time to time. It is rearing again here. Now, the suction tip has not actually touched the child, even though the child is extremely agitated and moving in a violent manner. And all of those studies have concluded, without exception, that the unborn child is a human being, indistinguishable from any of us, and an integral part of our human community. Now, the destruction of a living human being is no solution to what is basically a social problem. I believe a resort to such violence is an admission of scientific, and even worse, ethical impoverishment. Somehow I refuse to believe that Americans who have put men on the moon can't devise a better solution than the resort to violence. I think we should all
I'm going to open the phone lines of people, and I want people to call in, tell me what you think. We'll take some brief calls. Hold on 1 second, excuse me. I'm actually going to go to a poll right now. I want to know from all of you, what do you think of Roe v. Wade being overturned? Do you agree or disagree? The poll is open. Do you agree? So we're going to see what happens. We're going to, so that's on the GBOO 2786 page. I'm going to open the phone line. We can talk. Those, if you want to call in, you can talk briefly, because I do have to roll in a little bit. The number is 656-6760, 504-656-6760. Bishop, in the meantime, did you want to make some remarks, final remarks or anything?
Well, I just want to thank you for this show. It was very timely and very needed. And as always, you brought both sides of the equation to the table. You brought the pro-abortionist side, what they felt about the decision, as well as those that were, like myself, in agreement with the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. And if we can just come together and not always with an emotional response, but rather come together to find a resolution. I like what the doctor said. With a country that can send men to the moon and back and do all the things that we're capable of doing, certainly we can find a better way to help young people, children, and young adults find a better way to help their offspring come into this world without killing it. There has to be a better way. And if we really wanted to, we could find a better way.
Right. We can find a better way. Ladybug, the chat is on the Gboot 2786 page right now. I'm looking at the poll. I say Roe v. Wade is overturned. Do you agree? We only got 3 votes in, but Bishop, there are 67% say they agree with it being overturned, 33%. I take it's just one person who said no. Again, that's on I'm going to put the link to the YouTube channel where I'm at main channel where you all can go at and look at it. Do we have anybody? Nobody is calling in right now. I think people are probably at work listening in, so they're not talking. I spoke with brother Dennis Sperling. He is he has another YouTube channel. He, of course, does not support abortion. He's been adamant. And Gerald, Bishop Scott, you said you agreed with the decision. I see that you agree. Yeah, I think, and thank you for joining. I would like to, and I should have reached out to Pastor Childress, but we probably know that he is excited about this decision. Of course, there are people who are not going to be excited about it. There are a lot of people who are upset that this decision was made. I'm looking online and seeing on Twitter that some people who still don't understand law, Bishop, that they feel that they're being set back 100 years. I've seen some Black women and Black men even supporting abortion talking like this. And, they try to use Black women. What's interesting, Bishop, is when I was listening to the comments from the newscasters on CBS and NBC, this Black woman was talking about how they spoke to people in Mississippi with the women's rights organization, said this impact is going to affect Black women mostly because they only make up 30%, 20% of this population, but 75% of the abortions. Well, let's stop right there. If you're a minority in that population, but yet the majority of abortions, you're killing your children, your offspring, how do we reproduce as a society, as a race?
Well, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, you're talking about millions of children. Keep in mind, since 1973, millions of African American children have been aborted. Now we're number 3 in terms of population in this country. For years, we were number 2. It was the Caucasian race, the white race, and then came us for centuries. Yeah. And now we're number 3, and other groups are surpassing us in numbers at a greater number than we are. Can you imagine the millions that would have lived and had children themselves? 1973, they would have had children. Some would have been grandfathers and grandmothers by now. Yeah. But those children were aborted, so they never had the light of day, let alone produce children and grandchildren of their own.
Who knows?
So I think, this is a sad commentary.
We probably could have had the first Black president before Barack Obama, or even the first female president. We never know.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
God was the only one that knows. Attorney General. So this is in Missouri. I believe they've already passed the law already, just flat out outlawing abortion. Within minutes of the High Court's ruling, Attorney General Eric Schmidt issued an opinion to the Missouri Reviser of Statutes that triggers parts of a 2019 law effectively ending abortion in the state of Missouri. Smith, a candidate for the U.S. Senate, said Missouri became the first state in the country to do so. Today, following the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade with the issuance of an Attorney General opinion, my office has yet again reinforced Missouri's dedication to protecting the sanctity of life, both born and unborn. Yeah, there. Are you on food and spirit? All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, so yeah, that's interesting that they've passed this, Bishop, real quickly. So it sounds like the same ones in that population getting those abortions. Well, it was in the state of Mississippi, in that area. But black people, you got to remember, we don't make up the majority in this country, but we make up the majority of abortions. And if you listen to my live stream, when I've had Reverend Childress come on, he broke down the reproduction rate that every other group has. The African American community is behind everybody else. And he had those documented. Am I right, Bishop?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Okay.
And proportionally speaking, we only make it up about 20% of the population. And yet, when 70% of abortions, proportionally speaking, there's no comparison. And like you said a minute ago, Brother Gavin, what would it have been if all those people would have been still alive? Even half of those children would have ended up being grown men and women by now. 1973, they'd be 49 years old. They would be parents and grandparents as well at 49. I know a lot of grandparents that are 49, 50 years old. So they would have been grandparents and parents. And we'll never, just like you say, we'll never know who would have been birthed from them. We'll never know that. Because they're gone. They're gone. We'll never know who they would have been. Who's to say what they would have been? A senator, a congressman, a president, whomever. Someone would have made great impact in this world, but we'll never know that because they didn't been given the opportunity to see the light of day, let alone have any impact in the world.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead. Since nobody has called in, I take it everybody is at work listening in right now, so they can't really speak too much. I get it. I dig it. I'm going to wrap the show up because I got to run and actually take care of some other things. But, Bishop, I appreciate you calling in as always.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. And thank you for this show. It was very timely and I think even-handed in the approach. And that's why I love your show. It's even-handed. You show both sides of the coin, and we can decide for ourselves which side we stand on.
Yes, indeed. Well, and look, let's just see the final results of the poll before we go. I just want to see because I know there are people that have voted. I'm about to close the votes in, but it's according to this. We got 8 votes, so we got 75% of people who say they were in favor of Roe v. Wade being overturned. You know, Danielle says, I was born in 1973 and I have a 2-year-old son. Well, you never know. You never know how how the Lord will work. So, and who knows? Your son is your son is special.
Yes, he is
special. So he he's going to do something productive. And, hopefully when I have children, if I'm blessed with that, they'll do something productive and, they'll learn from their father if I do a good job about how to be a productive member in society. That's why that's why these institutions were created. We forget something, Bishop. The reason the states got involved in marriage and was because the children that come from it. That's why these departments were created. We care about the welfare of children.
Right. That's right.
And we don't want them in abusive relationships. That's why they had it. So, and we agreed to that. So, all right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up, y'all. This has been an interesting day. It's gonna be interesting what happens now. But you all hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Make sure you donate to the Cash App and the PayPal. Make sure you donate. Bishop Scott also has his show, Real Talk with the G-Men, that is going to be airing when?
Every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Danielle says she should have grandchildren at this age. Well,
just hold out and hold on. Change gonna come.
You don't want to be a grandmother at 29. That means they actually have women and they have people who are like that.
Oh yeah.
But even though it's happened, you deal with it. Make them a productive member of society. So, all right, guys, y'all be safe and be blessed. Danielle, thank you all as always. Derek Bailey, everybody's been on the chat. Rashana Morrison. It was good to see Black Mama for the first time in ages. And thank you to Bishop Scott. So I'm gonna roll out here, guys, because I got some other things to do. But it's gonna be an interesting summer, to say the least. It's summer and month of June. They make these decisions always in June, and summer is starting off with a bang. So we'll see what happens next. All right, I'm gonna get on out of here, guys. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Love you all. Be safe and be blessed. I'll holla. Peace.